Okay, Alexander, we've got an update on what's going on in Sweden. The government had to resign. There's been numerous attempts to try and form another government. It has failed. The moderates and the center tried to form a government. It's failed. Now it's gone back to the former prime minister, the most recent prime minister, Löfven, to try once again to form a government, a coalition government. He has until, I believe, this afternoon or tomorrow, before Tuesday, is the reports that I'm seeing here, to either get a government together or resign and most likely snap elections. So, I mean, a lot of uncertainty in Sweden. Alexander, the latest polling data is actually showing that the Sweden Democrats, well, first of all, the moderates are still polling pretty even where they were. The Löfven Social Democrats still have their base intact, but the Sweden Democrats, in other words, the conservative right party, is gaining strength, and this has got to be very concerning for the European Union, very concerning for the globalists. My God, if the Sweden Democrats get a crack at forming a government, it would be an earthquake in the world, especially coming out of Sweden. I mean, it would be an earthquake. Alexander, what do you make of what's going on?
Absolutely. Now, can I just say, I mean, you said that the Swedish Social Democrats, they're holding on to their base. I gather it's around 25% what they're polling at the moment. Well, that may seem like, they're the strongest party in Sweden.
You want me to give you the numbers, Alexander?
Indeed. Absolutely.
25.5 is what I'm seeing here. From the 21st to the 27th of June, 25.5. The moderates, 21.8. And the SD is 21.4. So they're vying for second place.
Exactly. Now, just bear in mind the history of Sweden. Sweden became the Social Democrats became the dominant party in Sweden in the 1930s, and they were polling multiples more, an order of magnitude more than the 25% that they're getting now. I mean, they used to get 45 plus. They were absolutely the dominant party in Sweden for decades. And, they had leaders like Tage Erlander and Olof Palme, who were international figures. And Sweden was seen around the world as the great model of social democracy. So, 25% may look impressive by comparison with, say, the 13% that the German Social Democrats are mustering. But in Sweden, it's actually a crash. And I wonder actually whether it is, in fact, I mean, the bottom limit of where the Swedish Social Democrats will go. I suspect there's been a sort of tentative stabilisation, but it doesn't look very stable to me. Now, if the party like the Democrats, which is a right party, wins in Sweden and forms a government, given that you're talking about Sweden, as the great centre of social democracy, that will be a political earthquake, a seismic change of the sort we've never seen. I mean, it would be comparable. The only thing I can compare it to is Marine Le Pen winning the presidency in France next year. And the extraordinary thing is that in Sweden, we're now looking at that actual possibility, because you said that the Swedish Democrats are on, almost 22%. They're now the second party. It's beginning to look as if the momentum is behind them. And if they actually become the biggest party in Sweden, which is not impossible, I mean, the gaps are not very great anymore. And as I said, this is against a background of the Social Democrats falling radically. If they fall further and the Swedish Democrats continue their rise and they become the biggest party, and they are given the option of forming a government, well, that will be a radical change. And it's now looking for the first time as if it could be a real one. So, it's something that would have been unimaginable a decade ago, but we are now almost on the brink of seeing it happen. Why is it happening? Well, I think many reasons. I think there is widespread sense in Sweden of a growing malaise there. The situation with crime is out of control. There's a general perception that the country's borders have essentially collapsed, and that all kinds of people, including very violent people, are able to come into Sweden. Sweden's become a much more unequal country than it used to be. Social democratic in many respects now, in name only, because massive inequalities have built up. And there are also concerns about the underlying health of the economy and of the way in which Swedish society functions. So none of that is surprising at all. But no one should underestimate the scale of the moment that we are now apparently coming very close to seeing. We will see what happens. Now, I have to add one very quick word of caution. It seems to me that the Swedish Democrats don't just need to be the biggest party after these elections in Sweden, though that would be momentous in itself. If they are going to form a government, they will need coalition partners at the moment, unless, they win on the scale that the Social Democrats once did, which is not impossible, but that's not what we're looking at the moment. And they may struggle to find coalition partners because of the way in which the political system works. And this isn't just, of course, the case in Sweden. It's the case right across the European Union. You have right-wing parties which appear to make breakthroughs, and then you find that the old establishment parties are able to cobble together coalitions with minor parties to keep the right parties out. But having said that, even if the Swedish Democrats struggle to form a government, and I'm not saying they will, but even if they do, if they come top of the poll, that will be an earthquake. And if they're able to close the gap with the Social Democrats, who are falling, well, that will be an earthquake too. So we are looking at extraordinary events in Sweden, and I suspect that it's a country now which, after decades of stability and perhaps even immobilism, is now starting to change.
I wonder if calling a snap election or trying to stitch together another coalition government is best for the Social Democrats and for the globalists. In other words, right now the Social Democrats have 100 seats in Parliament of a total of 349. The moderates have 70. The Sweden Democrats have 62. And I'm just kind of wondering, if they once again form a coalition, say by tomorrow we find out that Löfven has been able to stitch together once again a coalition of the moderates, of the Greens, of some smaller parties, once again a very weak, very shaky coalition. They've got to hold that coalition together until September 2022. I imagine they're not going to be able to govern with any efficiency or effectively. Once again, I imagine they're going to screw things up even more in Sweden, in which case that may embolden, empower, and give more momentum to the Sweden Democrats. In other words, come 2022, they may be in an even stronger position if Löfven actually does stitch together a coalition government and manages somehow to carry it across the finish line until 2022 when they have proper elections. It may be better for him to call those snap elections, because I can't see them governing effectively in the way they were, because the coalition is just so fractured. And it doesn't make sense to have the Greens with some smaller moderate parties or conservative or center parties, and then you have the left parties. The coalition just can't govern effectively. If anything, you're going to probably give more power, give more momentum to the Sweden Democrats in a year's time.
You're absolutely right, because can I just say what it would be if they managed to patch up a government together, they've managed to patch up the old coalition together, even though it's a coalition which isn't just fractured. I mean, it's quite clear that they all hate each other. I mean, the only thing that holds them together now is fear of the Democrats, if it even is enough to do that. So it wouldn't be a government. It would be an administration. It would be government in name only. It would be the same kind of immobilism that we've seen with Merkel's current government in Germany, which isn't really able to do anything because none of the parts really like or trust each other anymore. So it would just be a stagnant, fragile system. So I agree. I think in some respects it would make more sense to hold the election now. But I'm guessing that they're so scared of the Democrats that that's probably the thing that makes them nervous about the election. Whereas if they can put it off for a year, well, there's always the hope that something will turn up which might cause the picture to change. And that's, something one should never underestimate. That's always a way that these sort of people think. I mean, as we've discussed many times, the one thing they're very good at doing is kicking the can down the road, and that may be that might be the strategy at the moment. I'm going to make two quick observations. The first is that the Democrats, unlike say the AfD in Germany, seem a much better organised, far more united, far more effective political force than the AfD in Germany is. The AfD in Germany has become very fractured and internally disputatious. The Democrats in Sweden seem, to a certain extent at least, to have avoided that. And that's probably an important difference. That's one thing. The second point, and it's one which I know they're not going to listen to me, but I'm going to address the centre-left people. Look at what is happening to the centre-left across Europe. All of you embraced the European Union. You've taken your countries into the European Union. You are utterly associated with it. So what is happening is that as the European Union becomes ever more unpopular, so are you. And you are being outflanked on the right by parties that stand for the nations that you once led. Because the Democrats in Sweden are the party of Swedish patriotism and Swedish nationalism. And if you know anything about Swedish people, you will know that they are deeply patriotic. But the Social Democrats in Sweden, like the Social Democrat and left-wing parties across Europe, which once dominated Europe, have forfeited all of that. They've surrendered the patriotism out of loyalty to the European Union. And it is destroying them. And it will continue to destroy them until eventually there is nothing left. Well, they won't learn that lesson. They won't heed it. But, I mean, it's a point that has to be made, and I'm making it now. And if social democracy in Sweden dies, well, that will be one of the reasons, and perhaps the key one.
Yeah, I think that's the point right there. The European Union and the globalists, they cannot let Sweden fall to the Democrats. And the Democrats do have very much a together party. They seem like they're much more organized. They actually have a leader who actually addresses the situation and is someone that people can look at in Jimmy Atkinson. So there's no doubt that they're striking a lot of fear in their opponents, and I imagine in the halls of Brussels as well, with von der Leyen and Michel. I'm sure they're monitoring the situation carefully. But that's my point, and I think that's your point, is the European Union, they can't let Sweden slip away, can they? Because if Sweden slips away, and we've said it many times in videos, Sweden is very much a bellwether nation. It has a very distinct, a very popular and famous culture and identity. Everyone understands and knows all the things about Sweden and what Sweden makes and the things that come out of Sweden. A very distinct culture. But the experiment has been over the many decades to destroy and dismantle that culture and that identity. And they've taken it this far. This may be Sweden's last chance to hold on to what makes Sweden Sweden. Otherwise, it's all going to be, swept away. I mean, that is the fear, isn't it? You can't let Sweden fall because, my God, it is that bellwether country. It is a country that sets many trends for other countries in Europe and around the world. Trump mentioned Sweden many times. The U.S. always mentions Sweden for many of the policies that they've instituted or for some of the cultural things that they've brought to the world. I mean, it is Absolutely. That petri dish, an experiment, and they can't let that experiment fail.
Absolutely, and they will do everything they possibly can. They will pull out all the stops. They will cobble together coalitions. They will launch the various smear campaigns and media campaigns and all the things, all the usual bag of tricks which we've seen over the last, 10 years, 15 years. They will throw them now at the Democrats. The trouble is, as you correctly said, Swedish people are deeply patriotic and very committed to defence of their identity. And the Social Democrats, who formerly embodied it, have now, to a very great extent, betrayed it. So they're turning to the Democrats instead. And as you also rightly said, the Democrats seem much better organised, far better led than, say, the AfD does in Germany at the moment. And as a consequence, it poses a real challenge. I think it is going to be a tremendous struggle in Sweden. But the very fact that we're in a struggle at all in the fortress of social democracy in itself says huge things. And whatever happens over the next couple of weeks, year or so, this struggle will continue and it will deepen. And my own personal view is that sooner or later we will see this whole EU structure, which has been imported into Sweden with all the consequences, we will see it fall apart and break down. And this is the start of it. When a party like the Democrats is within range of catching up with the Social Democrats in a place like Sweden, well, the alarm bells must be ringing in Brussels very loud and very strong.
Yeah, I agree. The next year, I think, is going to be the battle of a lifetime in Sweden. And it's going to involve Sweden. It's going to involve the EU. I think it's going to involve the future of the entire bloc. And we'll see. I just don't have a feel, and people in Sweden who are watching this video can comment down below. I just don't have a feel what the bottom floor is for Löfven and what the upper floor is for the Democrats in the polling. Right now, there's a 4-point differential, plus or minus. I wonder how high the Democrats can go in gaining seats in the parliament. Anyway,
I do as well. And the more interaction we have from people in Sweden, the better it will be, because that will, of course, inform us going forward in future programmes. And we know that there are a lot of you there. So please do come.
They are. Have you seen an EU country with a party like the Democrats and Atkinson this close to power?
No, I have not. I mean, bear in mind we had the French regional elections recently, and Marine Le Pen herself is a figure who polls plus 40% in opinion poll ratings for the second round of the French election. Her party is nowhere close to that. I mean, so the National Rally in France is nowhere near as strong in terms of its position in French society that the Democrats are. in Sweden. And the contrast is that, the National Rally seems to have flatlined, whereas the Democrats are rising. And that's a big difference. Of course, they're very, very different countries. I don't know anywhere else in Europe which is analogous.
All right, we'll find out either in a few... The brothers,
Italy with the brothers might be coming closer. But again, I mean, and to be straightforward and harsh about it, if the right wins in Italy, it will be enormously important because of the weight of Italy institutionally within the European Union. But if you're talking about the battle of ideas around the world, as I said, Sweden, the fortress of social democracy, falling to the Democrats, that would be an even bigger earthquake than anything that could happen in Italy. So that's, just bear that in mind.
All right, we'll find out in a few hours, most likely by tomorrow, and we'll probably have to do a follow-up and see if we either have a coalition government again or if we're moving to snap elections. We'll see. All right,
absolutely,
guys. Look for us on Locals. Share your stories on our Locals community. You'll find a link down below to that. Join us on BitChute, ODYSEE, Rumble, and Super U. You'll find all our channels: Alexandra's channel, my channel, the Duran. It's all on those alternative platforms. And also go to the Duran shop. Maybe pick up a Sweden hat, magic mug, shirt. The Swedish flag would be good on these mugs or on these shirts, Alexander. And
absolutely correct.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, and I've got my British mug, but you can get a Swedish mug, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. You'll find the discount code down below. 10% off all merchandise. Take care.